Hi, Mike Stein here from the Center for Teaching Excellence. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a blur to a video. First, click on your account icon and select YouTube Studio from the list. Click Videos and select the video you'd like to blur. Click on the editor from the list on the left and scroll down and click Add Blur. Press pause to pause the video. If you'd like to blur faces of people in your video, YouTube will attempt to recognize the people in your video and automatically add blur based on their face. However, in this case, I'd like to add custom blurring so I can choose where exactly I'd like to blur. To do this, click Edit next to Custom Blurring. Move the playhead on the bottom to the point where you'd like to blur. In this case, I'd like to blur this contact information so that it's not publicly available to anyone who watches the video. To add a blur to the video, click and drag on the place where you'd like to blur to draw a rectangle. You can now see that a blur has been added to the video as well as to the timeline on the bottom of the screen. To adjust when the blur starts and ends, click and drag the beginning or the end of the blur timeline to change when the blur starts and ends. You can see that the blur moves slightly from the beginning until the point where the pop-up comes up. In this case, I don't want that, and I'd like to lock the blur so that YouTube doesn't try to guess where I'd like it to blur. Once the blur is locked, it will not move. Since this is where I'd like my blur to start, I'll click on the blur and drag the timeline to the playhead. Now let's check the end. Since I closed the pop-up window, I don't need the blur here anymore. So I'll adjust the end of the blur to match the playhead. Now I can preview the blur by moving the playhead before the blur and pressing play on the video. Save. You can see that Google Contacts. My blur ends a little after the box goes away. In this case, I'd like to get it even a little more fine-tuned. So I'll move the playhead over to the point where I think the box is going away and use the zoom slider on the bottom of the screen to zoom in on this part of the video. Now I'll adjust the end of the blur timeline to match the playhead. Now that I have blurred the contact information in the pop-up window, I'd also like to blur the contact information on the screen here. This will be a much smaller blur, so I'll just draw a new rectangle by clicking and dragging on the video and adjust the beginning and the end of the blur. I'll click Lock to lock the blur so that it doesn't move, and preview the results. Since I have added my colleague to my contacts list, I can now start a conversation with her in Google Chat. Once you're satisfied with your blur, scroll down to the bottom and click Done. We can now see that custom blurring has been applied, and I can either click Save to save the video over the existing version, or click Save as New Video to save this blurred video as a new video on my channel. If I change my mind and don't want to blur anymore, I can click Revert to Original to discard all of the changes. In this case, I will save the video in place. You will now see a pop-up that says, "This might take a while." Depending on the length of your video and how much blurring you've done, this may take anywhere from 5 minutes to several hours. Click Save. Check back after a while to see if your video is finished processing.